So now we're going to have a discussion about some of the key themes. And immediately after the talk finished, there was mention of some popular culture that links to tragedy. It has the same structure that Aristotle talks of as he gleaned from Sophocles' Oedipus Rex. Simon, you mentioned the Matrix.
Yeah.
Can you share with us that story?
Neo goes to the Oracle, and the Oracle explains to Neo that in the immediacy he's about to break the vase, and he does break the vase. The question she puts to him is whether or not he would have broken the vase had he known that, had she told him he was going to do it. So the self-fulfilling prophecy. So in the same way with Oedipus, if his parents hadn't been told, and he hadn't been told what the prophecy was, or also in the first instance, then his parents wouldn't have sent him away. And sending him away was the necessary part to have the prophecy fulfilled, because in order to kill his father and marry his mother, he had to not know who they were. So it was only, you could say, it was only because they were told the prophecy fulfilled. Is it fate, or is it actually human design?
And then people got quite excited. A couple of people got excited because there's also a Harry Potter reference. Who wants to have a go at that?
So in Harry Potter, it could have. There's a prophecy that's half overheard, and Voldemort takes his half hearing of it to mean that Harry Potter is the child that will kill him eventually, and so he tries to kill Harry Potter. At the end, close to the end of the story, we realised that there was another prophecy made, and it could have equally applied to Neville Longbottom. And had it applied to Neville Longbottom, it might, if Neville had been the chosen one, would Voldemort have been able to kill him more easily than Harry, or is it just because Harry was the chosen one, and also in trying to kill Harry, Voldemort then made him invincible? So it all became part of the self-fulfilling prophecy as well.
There's another reference I've just looked at, which is recently popular, which is Dune. Anyone's seen Dune or read it? Mm-hmm. In Dune, there are a group of people who are called the Bene Gesserit, and they are a political kind of class of people, but they're religious, but they are all about exploiting politics. And they go to Arrakis, the main planet in Dune, in order to sow the seeds of prophecy so that their prophecy can come true. But obviously, because they always have one eye on politics, it's a slightly more cynical version where they realise that they need to create a prophecy in order for them to get their political will realised. So they go to Arrakis and sow a prophecy of a Bene Gesserit woman who gives birth to a son who becomes the saviour of Arrakis. And then, obviously, the Duke's son, the Duke arrives on Arrakis, and his son, who has a Bene Gesserit mother, is met with all these people who believe in him as the prophet.
I'm trying to think, does that mean we just get rid of prophecy? Like, what's the solution? Like, well, not that there is a solution, but in every instance, someone's tried to predict what's going to happen or try to avoid it. It's gone south.
Well, I think it's human nature. So everyone, you want to know that the thing that you're going to do is going to end up with the ultimate aim. You're aiming for something, and you want to think about your actions are going to get you there. And so it's a kind of eternal question of, oh, if I'd done something differently, would that have happened, or would I have been in the same position as if you're always second guessing your kind of your actions, basically, to question whether or not.
Prophecy can be good as well. So if someone says, so in a week, I have a prophecy for all of you. Everyone is going to become a millionaire. Isn't that a big focus that can be done? And it's a prophecy, and it's been written in the stars for many years. You would love to believe it. So that's the question. Do you resonate with that prophecy and you want to become that prophecy in your life or no?
Yeah.
So you cannot, in a way, that's my point, that you can't get rid of it as it is, because it can bring people hope.
I
guess
guess
if
it
that's-
also brings bitter disappointment when they've got a millionaire within a week.
But it maybe
Yeah,
brings
absolutely.
more chance, because if you're told
You
that,
might buy
you're
the
more
lottery
likely
ticket.
to go and buy a lottery ticket, which
Make it
otherwise
happen.
you wouldn't. Exactly. But and there's a higher chance of it happening than if you didn't go to buy a lottery ticket, and you wouldn't have done it unless you were told that. But afterwards, if you don't win the lottery,
Yeah.
do you think, oh, did knowing that prophecy make me go and buy a lottery ticket? And if I hadn't bought a lottery ticket, would I have become a millionaire by some other means?
Or perhaps buying the lottery ticket is just the journey to becoming a millionaire in a way that you don't recognise, and that maybe you meet someone in the shop that gives you the business opportunity or something else. That happens.
I think it's human nature to question. It's kind of we've come up with prophecy as a device to explain or attempt to explain our desire to work out if we've got free will, basically, or not.
There's two branches to that, isn't there? Because some people like the idea that they are the agents of their own, destiny, and then other people prefer the idea that it's taken out of their hands and that what will be will be. Some people feel comfortable with that, whereas other people think, well, I'm not comfortable with that, because then where's my agency?
What was the difference? You described the difference between fate and destiny in an earlier Soulday Thursday.
Yeah.
Can you remind me of that?
Well, fate is out of your control. Yeah, whereas destiny, you have a choice. So like, destiny is the realm of free will within fated possibilities.
Think about people going to fortune tellers, and you would go if I think it helps depressed people. Depressed people can't see any future. It's a blank. There's nothing. No mountains, no rivers. You're just unhappy. And going to fortune tellers, people that tell you this, you are going to be happy. This is going to change for you. It will help you get there, to know that you do have a future. I suppose that's if it's a positive one. Wouldn't want to hear about this.
Yeah, we're all talking about. I'm like that we're talking about positive prophecies. Obviously, the story in Oedipus is a horrific prophecy.
Yeah, but I think the prophecy is like a narrative device that sets up the story, right? So all the examples we talked about, Harry Potter, Dune, Matrix, Oedipus, they're all like, I can't remember the definition of the myth earlier, they're all kind of somewhat magical or beyond like the reality of the world we live in. And it's there as like a narrative device to better tell the story, I think. So like your question was, do you get rid of prophecies? Well, if they're an narrative device, then it may help us. But nobody actually believes they're going to win the lottery in a week's time, and the prophecy says we do now. Like, in the real world, you get to go, I'll buy a lottery ticket, maybe I'll win it, but great. But it just feels like there's a bit of a distance between.
Some people do go to fortune tellers,
Yeah.
They do, yeah.
and they do genuinely believe that what they're saying is better for them. It's going to come true.
It is.
Do you think deeply happy?
Oh, a good prophecy. I was actually, when you talked about the lottery, I thought I'd bet about it.
Do you think someone who was, if there is such a thing, perfectly content would go for a fortune teller though? Because are you always going to a fortune teller with an idea in your head that they're going to say that there's something better in the future?
I wouldn't go now, because I'm on a real up.
I
I can only go down from there. I do not want to know.
If there was a perfectly happy person, you wouldn't need a fortune teller because you'd be so
Don't want
content.
anything else.
You don't want any.
Yeah.
Like those only exist. Prophecies and fortune telling and all of those things only exist if there's something that you want to change.
I suppose because
The flaw.
the negative ones teach a lesson to the proud people who are too powerful, and then the positive ones to pull us out of the quagmire. Margaret earlier today came in. The fire alarm went off in the building. It was freezing cold outside. So we all had to go out and our house and run through. We got back in. I said to Margaret, it was really cold out. She goes, I thought it was lovely. I'm really fresh. Just brightened up my day. I thought, wow, Margaret, you're feeling really
Right, go as far as that one. You go outside and get a bracing chill. When you come in, it's live and you're waking up like a cold dip.
But cold weather, some people look at it and they go, it's horrendous. And they're in a bad mood. They don't see it as a signal of positive.
There was one other thing I wanted to talk about, Oedipus, which I mentioned to you already. It's about someone who works here, and it's not about prophecy, but it's about men being in love with their mothers. And someone who works here, which I won't mention.
It's a hard bit, Mark.
Yeah,
Is that a question
No,
for
it's a great
later
story.
on?
It's a great
Also,
story.
we probably shouldn't put it while we're in the room.
No, I know the story. It's so good. It's so good. Go on, Margaret.
So this little boy says to his mother, obviously loves her so much, he says, when I grow up, I'm going to marry you. She said, but you can't. And he wants to know, well, why not? And she said, because I'm already married. And he said, who to? And she said, to Daddy. And he burst into tears.
It's
So
tragic.
the question is,
But the only reason, she's telling him, the only reason he can't marry her is because she's already
I was
married.
going to say that's not the only reason.
That's quite a normal thing for babies, though.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
they get jealous. Maybe they get jealous of when mum and dad are kissing.
And then they kill their father and
so how do they perceive love? That's because children perceive love differently.
Exactly. It's not sexual.
Yeah, and we're being conditioned after a while. How old is child, I guess.
Yeah, there's that vague area, isn't it? So it's not sexual, but I'm 16 years old.
Well, no, I mean the grandson of, but yeah, I mean I'm not a Freud in terms of the psychology bit. Only the painting of the grandson. But yeah, I mean we did come up with the Oedipus complex, I think, at least. No, I feel like there's definitely a grain of truth in that. I know some people who are like, you have effectively married someone who was a carbon copy of your own mother.
No, in a way it can be perceived as the person saw love, motherly love, because it's more feminine, it's more inviting, and it's not really popular between us to be really inviting and vulnerable, and then they marry the copy of that vulnerability, if that makes sense.
The kind of caregiver.
Yeah, absolutely, because they needed it, and then they saw it in
they
a
got
person. Yeah. So instead of
If they had that sort of a woman.
That's true.
yeah,
Depends.
That's true. You might not have had it. I do like the Neil Young tune, "A Man Needs a Maid." But I don't know, just the same sort of idea of the desiring the care. I suppose it comes from motherly love. I don't know. These days. Yeah, the modern world. Yeah, I did hear a great. I love this. There's a Lou Reed track, and it's the last album he wrote before he got married and had kids. And he's got a song. I can't remember what it's named, but the opening lines are just like this really sort of flat way. He goes, "I love women. I think they're really great." That's it.
That sounds like something supposed to get in their career, doesn't it?
Yeah. I love women. I think they're really great, but I have that feeling quite a lot. I'm just like, yeah. It's such a basic. If you put that in your English, yeah. I mean, I study at school that said write poems, but I think that's really great. It would be, it wouldn't score very well.
Although Aristotle might say that it's really concise and to the point,
That's
and
true.
nothing is getting lost in the length of the piece.
Yeah.
Also, it's encouraging, I think, in
There's no
that.
narrative arc there, though, is there? It's only one dimensional.
Yes, less
Yeah.
than
No
No,
beginning, middle, and
no
end.
character.
Yeah. At least one more clause to make it a beginning, middle, and end.
That's true. It has got no beginning, middle, and end. But it is asking you to kind of think of the woman in your own life. But yeah, there's no turning point. There's no transition point. Yeah, because he has that idea of is the tragedy better than the epic? Is the short story better than and today, if we were to have the same argument, is a series better than a film? It's a similar question. Discuss.
I think they're different. So I think like a film, you get, you know, and they're increasingly long films, and they should be short. 90 minutes, like, you know, 90 minutes. But you get like a very potent mix of all the emotions in that 90 minutes. But you can't go for the same depth as you can do in a series. So I love a big one like series, absolutely. But it's maybe a less perfect form of like visual storytelling in film. I think film is you can get it right in 90 minutes. And all that.
There's much more of a chance that things can go downhill in the series, I think. Often, like, the first and second series are really good, and then if they keep on making it, and the third and fourth, it can...
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
getting
because
lost in the
stories-
volume of
Yeah, well, exactly.
content.
Yeah.
Which is why the best series are the long ones where that doesn't happen.
But that's a real skill that they've,
Because I see it as
Fight
related
against
to love. Because when he has that line about the shortest experiences are the most potent and therefore the best, people talk about it with poetry as well. They create intense emotion when you felt for a short amount of time. That's why poems are short rather than too long. But you could make your point, you know. But what about the enduring love? It goes for like 60 years in the Titanic when those elderly couples are lying in the bed as the ship is going down. It's got such a beautiful moment. And yeah, they've overcome that idea of the long series ultimately becoming depressing.
It was told in a 2.5-hour film.
Titanic.
Yeah, the Titanic.
It's still shorter than a 5 series.
Exactly, yeah. So they told what was a very long existence in a very short amount of time.
Yeah.
So the version that we all remember is 𝐃𝐈𝐀𝐋𝐿,
Yeah.
we don't remember like, you know, all the diary entries and stuff. It's like encapsulated in one little 2-hour film.
It's a great tragedy.
But the long love story is an ideal that doesn't happen very often, and I think that you're more likely to get success in the short stuff than the long version.
They nail the like weekend date. Absolutely nail it. That's like the perfect form. The perfect form is the high, and then the change in state from glory to the misery.
They're getting shorter though, aren't they? We don't have the epic, and even the film. We have short film, which I discovered in London. And people that get into short film think, "Oh, I never want to watch a short film." They're really into it as an art form or something, and it's the emotion of the instant, and it can be falling in love with someone who might last your whole life. But there's an instant, and you might know that instant that happened. And that is the moment. That is when it moves from one thing to another.
Have you seen Modern Love, anyone?
As in the like New York Times thing. Yeah, I've seen some of them.
That's really lovely. I think you guys know.
The animated, they're verbal stories as well.
Maybe, but I've seen the.
It started off as a column in
Yeah.
the New York Times, and then they've turned it into short episodes. They're like 15 minutes long.
Maybe
half an hour. Yeah. But they're like, it's like a whole love story and it's very condensed. They're like a visual short story.
The real story, I think I have heard one, but it was someone wrote in their story and then you hear it as a verbal back on the radio.
They're so lovely. They're not just like Korean girl falls in love. It's about Hassan's relationship with her doorman in her New York apartment and how that grows and changes. And the stories, some of them are so odd, like some in kind of Britain. There's one girl who's got a sleep disorder, which means that she only wants to be awake at night time and sleeps during the day, and it's about her falling in love with a daytime man. Most people want to be awake during the day, and how they form a relationship, break, and then come back together again.
Who moves towards who?
They just kind of agree to live their lives separately but overlapping.
9:30 to 10 p.m. Perfect.
Yeah, it's actually like very low commitment.
It's a short-term relationship.
Yeah,
You have
exactly.
intense bursts. It's like 2 hours.
Yeah.
12 hours.
You can get that from song as well. You can have a 3-minute song which has really tight story. A love story.
Yeah.
think it works in all art forms. Like the short stories are often a lot more. I don't know. Sometimes you read a short story and you come away feeling like,
Intense.
yeah, exactly, a lot more kind of drained.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, like it's a more intense emotion than getting to the end of a longer book. And I think with like visual art, sometimes the most amazing drawings can be ones where someone's created something with like just a handful of lines, and like that is incredible. I think it's one of the reasons like Matisse is so revered, because there's a few things that he does so simply, and yet you get a whole kind of emotional response from a few lines.
Yeah, it reminds me. There's a poem, really short. I'd say it's unnamed. It goes, "She by the river sat, and sitting there, she wept, and made it deeper by a tear," which is really short. But when you hear it, you're like, oh, like, who's sitting by the river? Why is she crying? You know, this river's getting deeper. It's a good, but it's like, how short can you go?
That thing about the saddest story ever written, which is one pair of baby shoes for sale on the roof.
No, that is sad.
Like you can produce amazing, like
But it's still not like one word.
no,
Because some people say, like, is it? Can a poem just be like, ouch? You know, you've like expressed emotion and you've shown pain, and the imagination's engaged.
you need a bit of context though.
Yeah.
Ouch could be man walked into a bar, like like hilarious, or it could be I've just had to chop off my arm in 137 hours or whatever.
Yeah, but context why? Like, she by the river sat. Who's it? Is it a mother? Is it a daughter? Is it a lover? The ouch could be anyone.
The context comes from the title. That's what I found in poetry. You can cheat. You get a few more words in the title. An Irish man loses his. Thinking about that. Oh, never mind the poem I'm thinking about. But I get it from the title, and then everything flows from that.
I think with the word ouch, you don't have any investment. That you said you have to relate to the person you want to. In your slideshow, you want to know that it's a good person who's falling into misery. In both of those stories that you just told, the short stories, you feel like there's a good person who's fallen on misfortune, and you think of that person and all the things they might have gone through. Whereas just saying ouch, you have no connection to that feeling. There's no character. Exactly, there's no character.
What if
There's no
someone
story.
said, for example, now giving you a task, you see a word and you see association with that word at this moment, what would you feel? For example, if I ask you, ouch, what does it mean for you? Does this mean like, oh, it hurts, or ouch, or...
Heartbreak. What about you, Charlie? You hear ouch?
Yeah, actually, what I thought was stubbing my toe. It's like, that's ouch is quite comical.
Yeah, I think of like slapstick, like someone.
It's not like a heartbreak or heartache. It's like a physical injury.
That's quite a time story. My dad stubbed his toe and really started laughing. He actually broke his toe. We were skiing.
But that just show you that
What do
from
you think
even
when you
one
hear
word,
When you
we
hear
all can
ouch?
imagine something
I
different.
think that's the kind of comical kind of
Yeah.
It's almost like
like Batman. Exactly. Yeah.
Right. The exclamation mark.
Yeah.
And for example, for you,
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't even get an image didn't even arrive. I was just thinking about whether it would work.
I don't think a one-word story.
No,
ever
I
works.
don't.
I don't think it could.
Yeah, it's not enough.
It has to
I
be a
don't
really
think it's
dark
enough.
word like this.
I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's yeah.
Going back to what somebody said, this good character now. When I was watching what you were talking about, I thought, but it's bad characters. People are fascinated by bad characters. That's who they want to watch. It's not necessarily the
Isn't
good
the
character.
importance having a character as
Yeah.
opposed to a character being good or bad? Because you can invest in a character. You can invest in a bad character. You can see yourself in a bad. There are lots of films.
You want the bad character or the good characters to win. You want them to succeed in something.
Sometimes you want
They
the bad
don't.
character too, and that's conflicting, really, isn't it? And I'm thinking about, I never watched this series, but everybody was fascinated by it a long, long time ago. And it was J.R. Ewing in Dallas. I never watched it, but people talked about it and wanted to see it. And I think he was a bad man, but they liked that,
Well, that's
and they
exactly
were
what-
watch
You always
it.
go on about novel as well.
Well,
No, Lolita. Or
oh, Lolita. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, Planet World. I thought you meant the song.
Yeah, no, did you hear that C was on Radio 4 2 days ago? I think it's a brilliant thing to see the commander of the British Secret Service, MI6, is on Radio 4 2 mornings ago, talking about the importance of openness and its relationship to secrecy. And then the following day, the thought of the day, 7:45 a.m. by Bishop, I remember her name. She was talking about how opposites conflict and harmonise. And she has this final line at the end where she goes, "When we're most in despair, we find the greatest good." And that's how I woke up this morning. I was like, wow, that's nice, thank you. But it all led from...
Complete despair.
Yeah, but I was thinking I'm not even in deep despair right now, but I get it. Like, someone listening to Radio 4 right now this morning is so in despair, and they've heard her say that. And then,
That's their prophecy.
That is their prophecy. Yeah, exactly. That is their prophecy. Yeah.
They're like, now I've had it on the radio, something good.
Yeah. I hope something different. But this story is all about the bad. But when was the transition from the warning of people who are overconfident ultimately leading to ruin, which happens to Oedipus, and what happens to Aristotle, to, I'd say, the more Christian interpretation, which is ultimately it's going to be great. When did that happen? Why does that happen? There aren't really stories now that all ends in
Is that...
There are lots.
I think.
Yeah, there are ends in tragedy. Those are often the best ones.
I think there's a difference though between it being like, I'm not sure that Oedipus is necessarily that much of like a moral instruction thing. Surely part of the point is Aristotle's like, it makes the best viewing because it's exciting and because you get invested in it. It's not because it's the best form of tragedy, that it's the best form of drama because you learn something at the end. It's not necessarily that like, oh, I think that Oedipus, like everyone thought they were above the prophecy and then they got their comeuppance and everyone died at the end of it. It's gripping because you have this kind of emotional roller coaster that you're like, you don't want this to happen. Like you know what's going to happen and then they don't know what's going to happen. That kind of, I think that's the argument for it being good drama, not necessarily.
It's not a moral
it's not a
guide.
moral
It's just
guide.
good
Yeah,
fun.
exactly.
Not good fun, but gripping.
But that's why we watch like horror. That's why you watch people
Yeah.
watch horror films and stuff. People enjoy being scared or
Yeah.
enjoy it, the emotional
Yeah.
response rather than people coming away thinking,
Yeah.
I've learned something really good. I'm really glad the bad guy got that comeuppance, or I'm really glad.
Simon, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm interested in what stories you think end in tragedy. Because I can think of
Right.
one example, but you said there are lots. And
There are loads.
Go on.
I'm just thinking of one in particular,
Yeah.
actually. The one I just don't mind. But it's a really intense Charlie Brooker Black Mirror story.
Oh, well, Black Mirror is like another level. That
Yeah, but there's
always
that
ends
one
in
about the
such-
kid who you like invest a lot in, and you're so worried about him
Yeah.
because he's being hounded by all these people on the internet, and then it turns out it's a pedophile.
Oh, yes.
And you're
that's
like,
the one.
oh my god, what's happening to him? This is so bad. Poor kid, he's being like vilified, all this stuff, and then right at the end, it's like he's a pedophile. You're like,
Yeah,
great,
that
but I've
story
invested
is
a lot
so
of emotion
good.
into you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but there's loads of others.
All the Black Mirror.
Memento.
All the Black Mirror.
Memento. It's a film where everything happens backwards. It's about a guy who can't remember things for more than like 20 minutes or whatever.
Okay.
He forgets.
Yeah.
His wife is dead, and he's trying to solve the mystery of his wife's murder. He can only remember things in 30-minute bursts.
Right.
And then at the end, you realise that it's all one big person over his wife is just a person constantly in his life.
Oh, God, that is awful.
Yeah, Black Mirror is good.
What about Old Boy?
Well, American films.
American films have the happy endings.
Always.
Yeah,
It's the box office.
yeah.
If you've got a good end, a bad ending, they'll cut it out and they'll put a good ending in.
Exactly. And
Whereas
Frank is a
European
perfect example of that.
But European films, you can have bad endings.
But
It's
you-
their art house.
Also, because the European films are still more determined in terms of the critic by Aristotle's original description of what makes a good story. Like he didn't think, like people were obsessed with his view of what makes a good story. So it
Special
ended,
effects very low down.
yeah, special effects. If it ended happy, they just wouldn't perceive it as being good. They loved it. The French loved the original.
Well, he also
view.
had like, so Aristotle had he defined tragedy, but he wasn't defined comedy. So, like, he saw comedy as like the lesser of the two things. He's like the opposite of somebody has a happy ending. Those two somethings often high perch and cool. So maybe that's a similar thing with this pure European comedy is more tragedy.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because that is the key distinction is that tragedy is good people falling, whereas comedy is bad people succeeding. You know, like when you watch that marathon story with Simon Pegg, it's just this silly guy, or you watch even the American ones, the school ones, American Pie. You know, he's the sort of like failing guy who then ultimately ends up with like winning the beautiful girl. That's his description.
Just to mention, maybe it's a bit too lowbrow, but Love Actually is quite a good one where it has some happy endings and some unhappy endings, and they get away with it because they've got a mixture of the two. So it is a really very popular film and doesn't all end happily, but there is that tone to it which makes it feel more like real life because not everyone is.
But equally, if they'd only had the really the one that stands out. Well, actually, look, the two, the Emma Thompson storyline and the one with the woman and her brother. And amazing, really attractive man. Those two stories could probably be like short films on their own, and they'd be like kind of tragic masterpieces. But because they're interwoven with the other things, but they're brilliant, and you would watch them just for that, and they're sad stories.
So sad.
But because they've got they're outweighed by the more hilarious stuff.
I remember Richard Curtis wrote Four Weddings and a Funeral whilst he was at Cambridge and Banksie. It was exactly contemporary. It was originally called Four Weddings and a Honeymoon, and he sent it to Emma and said, "What do you think of this script?" And she said to him, "It's way too happy.
Really?
This is too much. You've got to bring a bit of darkness in." So he rewrote the play. The script is Four Weddings and a Funeral. Because I think he loved the happy ending.
But I think there's quite a lot of people that have that. There's actually Lucian Freud. One of the things he said is he likes pictures to have a little bit of poison in them, and I think that is quite I think that applies to a lot of art forms. Actually, some of the best ones. There has to be an element of darkness. It's like black comedy is funnier than just a whole load French farce kind of people running around and things. If there is an element of tragedy in things that makes things funny
and better, even if it's not comedy, the element of tragedy is necessary. If you watch something that's just happy all the time, you enjoy it.
Yeah, it's mind-numbing.
Which is
not
ironic.
even Disney.
It's
Not even
ironic
Disney. Not even Moana. Not even Moana's having a great time all the time. She's having a shit time.
Great music.
I think there's
She's got great music
times
the whole way
that-
through. So.
But they have to have a shit time. Simba has a shit time.
Simba has a
Well,
pretty.
good classic storytelling these days is a good person is having, an average happy life. Something really bad happens to them, and then they end up, succeeding, getting even higher than where they started. That's just classic.
But that is the Christian story.
Right.
Like Adam and Eve, good people, have a fall by eating the fruit, and then they have redemption, which brings them up as a lucky fall. But before then, that wasn't the story arc we were interested in. It was either Achilles, where he just falls, he has glory, but he falls, he dies, or Oedipus, who just falls full stop.
I'm much more attracted to that than I am to the happy ending.
Why?
Because it's a much more intense feeling, which I prefer to be to watch a story and to be left with I'm rarely left with a euphoric high from the story. Everyone's happy, and that's great. It doesn't actually make me feel that happy. But when it's tragic, it leaves me with a much deeper and longer lasting feeling.
But where's the hope in that? That's what gets me down.
Yeah.
Yeah, you leave it, you feel fucking empty.
Yeah.
For example, Lord of the Rings. Anyone watched or read it?
familiar with the.
That's nice. Yeah, but anyways, it's quite positive, interesting story, and people love it. So to this day, so you read it, you watch the movies, it's gained quite popularity. That's how we see it. It's good. Yeah. So, what do you guys think about that? Because it's a positive story in a way. Obviously, characters, as they're told, they have some downfalls. They come back. For
That's a
example,
real epic, isn't it?
I would,
Yeah.
I would argue that is the case of long is not good.
Really? You don't like Lord of the Rings? Really?
I did like it as both as a book and as a film. I read it as a book first and then watched the film later on. But yeah, like it's not beginning, middle, end. It's like beginning, middle, end, middle, end, then middle.
Yeah,
It's like and it goes off in all sorts of different places. And there's arguably lots of that story that you could remove, and it would.
Yeah,
Anything
exactly.
situation for earlier. And also a lot of people's like fascination with that story that it is like some sense of mythical, like all the creatures and all the different species are like unhuman. And that might read something more human in that. But it's I think there's lots more to Lord of the Rings than a simple tragedy or comedy style structure. Like way more complex.
I love it.
I'm not sure. I think the film ruined it for us.
True that. Also, when I was reading, I just skipped the pages. I found boring. But I didn't find it such an issue.
I think I'm just bored of it.
Like 30 pages long.
Why do you get bored again?
I don't need to look at I love you ever again. That's all I think. I mean, yeah. Ditchy for sure, but it's more just the fatigue of seeing the same person on screen so long.
If Orlando was classic, red sky in the morning, done in shadows. Great line. That's not in the book.
Did you check?
The thing that's so
I
irritating
feel like page 3.
when you read the book, and it's three, obviously 3 books. And I remember, I think it's the same when you watch the films. You assume when you set out in the first film that they're going to put the Ring of the Fire at the end of the first film, and then you get to the end of the first film. You think, wait, I've got to wait 3 books. But the thing is, I remember watching the film with someone who made that comment and got to the end of the film and thinking, hey, you just spent 2.5 hours watching this movie. If you read the book, you're going to spend weeks to that moment at the end. There is that. But I like the long, because I haven't read a long book for a while. I did read Middlemarch 2 years ago.
Yes.
Like 750 pages, George Eliot, originally, what's her original name? Mary. Anyway, George Eliot, who's changed her name to George Eliot because she felt like she'd be better received as a man than a woman. And it is a really good book. Virginia Woolf describes it as a book for grown-ups. It's kind of a description of the book. But I hardly remember any of it, but there's this one moment where there's an older man. He's a priest. And he's fallen in love with a beautiful woman who's a good woman. But at the same time, she's being pursued by a man who's her own age, who's silly. She knows he's silly. And he's already asked her to marry him twice. And the older man and the special woman go for a walk down the end of the garden. And he's getting ready to ask her if she wants to spend the rest of her life with him. And there's just this moment, you've literally been reading like 450 pages. And there's just this moment in the book, and he gets to the end of the garden, and he realises it's not going to happen. And so we turned around and we went back. And that was the end of my life that I could have had with her. But I felt like I needed to read the 350 pages to fully appreciate like the importance of that one moment that came about through a whole lifetime. And it would have been hard to do justice to the small moment. Then she ends up marrying the young man, and he's lucky. Everyone knew how lucky he was.
But you can achieve that same 350-page like depth in a few glimpses at the start of the movie, right? You can keep the lingering eye, like looking into the mirror, looking sad. There's certain visual things that you can do to replicate 350 pages without having to take people through like 12 hours of him wanting to be with the woman.
I told the story that
the intensity wouldn't be as deep.
Well, you could watch
over
12 hours.
the 350 pages.
Yeah, I think it does depend.
Also, with particular reference to Middlemarch. It took me. I started reading Middlemarch loads of times before I actually got to the end of it because it was boring, and also because I was like, I hate this character. She's really annoying. And at the beginning of the book, you're like, so irritating, and you're just this kind of pious, goody woman. And by the end of it, you're like, you're a feminist icon. I love you. And she's absolutely brilliant. But like, I think part of you need the entire book, or however many pages it is, to go from finding her really annoying and boring at the beginning, to then her having a bit of a kind of her being like, oh god, I've married the wrong man, and then her becoming this kind of heroine.
Which I
Which
agree
you
with.
wouldn't necessarily have all got in the few lingering.
I agree with that
shots.
instinctively. But there is a point though that goes against this, which I always, because I've never read War and Peace. But I remember years ago reading a line that goes, people who read really long books always say that they're brilliant, because otherwise,
It's a waste of time.
What a waste of time. So there's that sort of, which I do get. Although I still think that it is yeah, I still think it's
War
well.
and Peace is really good.
You've read War and Peace as well. And to be fair, I thought
You can say that.
yeah, you would.
Yeah.
I
No, it's my thing. I took up my gap year. I was like, I'm going to have to take one book, and then it lasts me.
Is it the heaviest book you could
And
find?
yeah, and then you get paged out along the way.
Did it pay that along the way? Did you leave
Yeah,
it like
so you-
a hostel?
Yeah, there's a
Like
hostel somewhere that's got like the last like chapter of War and Peace. And
yeah,
then
no, because you were just living for the backpack, making fires. For War and Peace, it's like a little.
also, because I thought it would make me look really good.
I reckon there could be like a Dan Brown mystery novel where somebody goes around the world catching the chapter of War and Peace. Who is this woman who leaves me chapters everywhere? What's she doing?
The other question that came up, or this the theme in Oedipus, is this idea of whether or not it's better to know the truth, which is still a huge topic now. Like Oedipus aspires to know the truth. He asks a prophet to tell him who killed the king thieves. So realizing that it was him. And through knowing the truth, he then gouges out his own eyes. But we see it today. Is it better to be ignorant and happy, or knowledgeable and tragic? And I think to try and make it more relevant, I think the like obvious one that springs to my mind is when there's philandering at home in relationships. Would one rather know the truth or be shielded from it?
And the friend, as a friend, should you,
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Should
do you tell
that
someone?
or do you keep counsel?
What do you think, Margaret?
I think I have to weigh it up. I like to say that I tell the truth, and I know in that particular those particular instances, I'll go to the party in the wrong and say, you have to do it, because if you don't, I will. That's how I deal with that one. But there's lots of other cases when it might be better that you don't say anything.
That all depends on the context so much.
It's also complicated if you're, by the fact that if you're the person with the knowledge, like, are you relieving yourself of the burden by saying it? Are you kind of like, are you telling the truth because you think it's better for your friend to know that their husband's cheating on them, or because it will make you feel better for not being carrying around this?
In my belief in those cases is the other person is always better if they know, because they can make life choices then that they won't otherwise. If they knew that and they'd known it at the time. Somebody said to me once, I wish I'd have known that years ago. A friend had slept with her boyfriend. She said, I wouldn't have stayed in that relationship. I'd stopped that long ago. She felt she wasted time.
Yeah, there's quite a good point made by 𝐃𝐈𝐀𝐋𝐿 about despair and the distinction between despairing and knowing that you're despairing, and despairing and not knowing that you're despairing. And what he says is that people whose partners are having affairs are despairing, they don't actually know it. And those who know are despairing and they know it.
And then it could be
And then yeah, and like what's like it's both despairing. It's embarrassing. Like so embarrassing if you do suddenly realise that what the truth is, and everyone else has been holding it back from you.
How can you despair without knowing something?
I think you can, because you feel it. You know things aren't right. You don't know what it is. And sometimes people ask the question, And they'll know something's wrong, but they can deny it. Their partner will deny it.
Some people won't. Some people hide it really well.
Yeah.
And then
Well, there's
There's
also
definitely
those who don't want
it
to
can't
know.
be a.
Also, we want to believe the truth. And then,
But also, is your separation between the circumstances where it's better to tell them, it's not better to tell them, entirely determined on your own personal relationship with them in that scenario.
Yeah, that's what I can't
So for
say.
sometimes you might say, well, actually, you know, subconsciously, might say, you know, it's more hassle than it's worth because I'm not actually invested.
Yeah, it's none of our business.
Yeah,
And
so
some
I'm
of
not
my
that close to it.
business, I don't know it.
I think that would be.
I think
Whereas
I'm
you feel
generally
guilty
none of my
about-
business. I just don't want to be involved. I don't want to be the prophet. I don't want to be the bearer of bad news. I don't want to, even with someone I know really well.
You get, you know, you are the bringer of bad news, and you do get despised, or and you have to. Sometimes you'll live with it because it was the right thing to do.
But
That
sometimes
person will tell you anyway. They'll be angry with you, and they'll be really, really angry.
They're telling you the
They'll say,
truth.
"Look, you're telling them
Yeah,
the truth.
exactly.
But
Yeah,
they
that's
will,
what I find.
but they'll still sometimes. I found they'll still thank you for it because nobody else would have told me. And I did need to know, but they don't like you for it, and you that's what you live with. You've lost that relationship
But once
somewhat.
they've accepted kind of the truth, then you can, I think, gain a bit of that relationship back because they realise that they are better off knowing.
Better
So you did them a
friends.
favour.
Yeah, better friends. Yeah. But
not
I would say
everyone
that's not for every circumstance.
yeah.
So, like in infidelity, maybe, but I wouldn't. Generally, people are probably happier ignorant.
I like a bit of.
Say that.
There's a chap called Paul who I was at Bristol with. You know, he's an advocate of the truth, and I think that I was on holiday ordering him a drink. He goes, "Oh, you're the most unaware of self person I've ever met." I'm like, "Paul, I'm buying you a drink." I'm like, "I don't need to know this aspect of it." He goes, "Really important to be honest in life. Like, honesty is the best policy." And I was saying to him, honesty is not always the best policy. Like sometimes a good friend knows when to lie
Yeah.
and when
Or
to tell
say
the truth. And when to tell the truth or say nothing.
Has anyone done any one of those DNA checks where you can find out about your ancestry, but also your potential health history?
Yeah.
So I've done one where it's like my DNA. It's very like a prophetic view. I can find out that I chose to pick the right crops if I might have to mention. And so you can make a choice when you send off your results and say, do I want to know and be aware of this tragic ending in my life, or be ignorant and in the future if I wouldn't know about it. I can't prepare, I can't take photos of my life or write a diary to try and maintain my memory. So that's a really good comparison, I think.
It really is.
So you've got this opportunity to find out or be like purposefully.
What did you choose?
Purposely.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I
I
would.
Yeah. I mean, there's no way I'd like to know. Like, if I guess like I said it to my wife. She's like, "Oh, you might want, if it's mentioned, you might want to like take photos or like write a
You
book,
do that
like
anyway.
yeah, but you might have more motivation to do it than you do to remind them that lose your memory."
Or you can take steps to
You
Yeah.
can't. But we know that from the story.
The harder you
avoid your fate.
step, the harder you fall.
Yeah, exactly. You can't escape your fate. You can't avoid the
But
mental.
if it's biological, you might be able to.
can do brain.
Has anyone
Sudoku.
accepted
Okay, I sent my grandma to both.
I mean,
Like one of those
I think-
online.
obviously, there's like definitely a history of like dementia in my family, so I don't know that I'm going to get it, but also it's probably kind of quite likely. So
If it was binary,
Maybe
I can tell you right now if you're going to get dementia or
No,
not.
don't.
You could, not me obviously. I'm not going to get
Like,
But if you had the opportunity to find out today, and you could choose yes or no, like the red pill or the blue pill, go out to nature, you could choose what you want to do. You've got a very binary choice.
yeah, I don't think I would want to necessarily find out.
How
I
many
think
you choose?
it's a good idea. You choose kind of like
So it's kind of
There's also a difference between like bigger things, choosing to know whether you're going to cancer or not.
you are
And
going to die.
choosing to know
I know that.
choosing to know things in the short term, like that whole theory about if you're waiting for a bus, you don't know how long it's going to be. It's way more frustrating.
Oh,
than
yeah,
waiting.
yeah,
But
yeah.
if you know it's going to be 15 minutes,
That's true.
so
Very true.
you want in those circumstances is proof knowledge helps you deal with.
Yeah. It's like the loading bar on the
Yeah.
screen because you can see it going up, filling up, and you're patient because you can see the progress.
Yeah.
Whereas if there was nothingness, you wouldn't have that patience.
Yeah.
But that's a positive. Then you certainly know you're going to get the bus.
Yeah, that's true.
You know,
Yeah.
there's a positive though. That fortune change.
Yeah, but then when it disappears, it's more annoying.
Yeah.
Than you've just been waiting.
There is
It's like
quite-
2 minutes and then like, I see.
And there's quite good Roy Sutherland talk, he's like Adman, where he said that rather than trying to increase the speed of trains so they arrive in time even more often with the trains, we should just line them with Paul Roger and things like that, and then people will ask them to be delayed. Like, so much money is spent on, such a
He's a
tool.
very, very fun guy.
Yeah, I did actually meet him not that long ago at my great uncle's wife's funeral. It was funny because he kept asking for half drinks and then literally drinking them in one. Because I didn't have a half, but it was gone. I was like, another half? You said something just now about choosing or not whether you want to know you were going to die, whether you had some kind of illness.
I think I might.
Yeah, we're all going to die. Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. I was thinking like, now there's a bit of a trend at the moment. I've seen a few posters where you have a day for a box for every day of your life, assuming you're going to live for 80 years, and you can see your life on a piece of paper, an A1 piece of paper, and you mark it off. And it's the idea that then sort of encourages you to live to your yeah. So there's a difference. It's not necessarily fulfilling a prophecy by the fact that you're going to die. It's more about living as much as you can within the year.
Throughout the traces, units of time.
Pretty much, yeah.
Bit about a boy that divides his time into units of time. His time in units.
Yeah, exactly. He doesn't
So
know.
it's like in these units I can do
Does
this.
that end unhappily? It's surely unhappy during the.
No, it ends
Content
happily.
that
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
that charming scene where he's singing on stage with the kids,
Yeah.
and they're
The
all
mother
throwing,
doesn't die.
That's
It's all
right.
the same formula.
ending good.
Ending happy.
Yeah, but you don't
Yeah,
mind.
but
You
like-
love.
I don't like this one in
About the boy
particular.
is unhappy during a lot of it, so I don't think it is the same.
But so is Notting Hill. So
No,
is,
it's not.
it is
Really?
unhappy.
No way. Notting Hill has
Love
got
Actually.
lots of happiness in it.
No, but it's not about the. They all have happiness, but it's about the end.
But it's also about the art.
Nice to meet you.
Well, then, Patricia, I'll see you next week.
It's about the arc. It's
Yeah, but you can't say it's the same if the middle, like the start is like happiness and then it ends like this or like dives down. You know, it's a different arc. If there's like a lot of unhappiness and it ends
I think if you were to
You know
chart
what
them
I mean?
out, I think you would find the arc. It's like
Very quite similar.
tracing paper.
Yeah.
I think you would find that. Who are the people who make those films?
Well, the Notting Hill one.
All of them.
Simon really
Those-
struggles with Simon.
those types, yeah, but I don't think you can like Notting Hill and
Love Actually.
yeah, you know, all of those, yeah, but I just don't think About a Boy is in the same category.
What about knowing how many likes or dislikes? you
Oh
have
yeah,
On or like knowing whether a message has been read on
yes,
WhatsApp.
awful, isn't it awful?
I don't care. So,
Yeah.
I care that you like if I text you or you text me about this film I didn't reply.
Yeah.
I would care if and I would care that you reply to me. But I don't care if like if you took get time to reply, you would come to reading replying or because nobody here likes
Do you have the blue dots?
I think they just
I haven't seen the blue ticks for years.
I
Yeah, I
have blue
turned
ticks
them off
because
years ago.
I've got them.
Does that mean you don't get blue ticks from other people like
Yeah.
I have
you
no
take
idea.
one, if you
Yeah,
don't,
I have no idea when someone opens it, and I know they don't know if I've opened it. I love it.
I think like you can most people you can reliably
Oh,
assume
okay.
that they read it in the same day.
not give
Yeah.
other people blue
Choose
ticks
where.
and see theirs.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
So
really
you've got
good.
That's what I have. It's genius.
Decide. I find it, yeah, it really annoys because sometimes you need an urgent response about something, and that, like, I would like it. Those are the cases that I want to see someone
Surely
read
that's
it.
the tone of the
You
message.
just pick up
right,
the
you know?
phone and call them.
Yeah, but I would just pick up the phone and call them if I see they've like haven't seen the message or something, or like
Yeah.
you
wouldn't
get
know
a bit
me
of
because I never have any ticks. Even tonight when we started this conversation, I saw on the screen the number of people watching. There was a hell of a lot of people.
Huge,
That's all I can
huge.
say. It was enormous. There were so many people. But it affected me, and I didn't want to know.
Yeah.
But then at the same time,
It's the pressure of having so many people listening.
it's really hard.
But then you know, if you see that number and it's like 100, it feels great. So you're tempted to look, right?
Yeah. Although I would say I think that in the instance when it begins, there's a moment where you use that to judge the value of whether or not it's worth recording, say what's being said. But as soon as it begins, you realise that actually it's fairly irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's about
what's actually
being said, and whether or not that's valuable.
I did something the other day, which so my company runs a number of events throughout the year, and we had one a couple of weeks ago where I had to do like a 5-minute wrap up at the end of the second day of the event. So I was live from my home office to I don't know how many people were tuning in, but it's just 5 minutes right at the end of the day. I've prepared my sort of 5-minute speech to say today we cover all this ground, tomorrow we're going to do these sessions, looking forward to seeing you there type thing. And not knowing how many people were watching was for me more paralysing than knowing how many people were watching. So I was like, I've got no idea if 5 people are watching this or 5,000, and it could have been anything in that category, it could have been anywhere in that window. And
really
I found I would much rather know.
Really?
Because then you can pitch it if you're
Yeah.
it. So.
Yeah, because if it was just 5 people guys, thanks so much for staying around. It's great.
But it's the same irrespective. I've realised that I thought that we hadn't reached the end of the hour.
The tide's gone out, that's for sure.
Yeah, but we've actually done the whole hour.
Do we need to stop or can we continue?
And more. Hang on. Oh wait, we should do a quick hello. We've still got someone listening, which is actually fucking great.
Who's that lunatic?
I don't know, but let's do a quick hello. No, we need to say a quick goodbye.